Oh, hi there! I have been taking IELTS since 2018 every 2 years because your certificate expires every 2 years. Every time it was above 8, by the way. And I have been teaching specifically for IELTS for 6 years now, and all of my students get the score of 7 and higher. So I think I can now appoint myself to be the IELTS master. And I decided to make a video to discuss all these tips, tricks, and formats of IELTS to help you prepare. First, the basics. IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System. It is the most popular English test in the world right now. It is accepted in various countries for immigration and citizenship, and in universities that teach in English. So naturally, it is one of the most important steps that you take for your relocation. There are two types of this test, general and academic. Both are equally accepted, but in different places. Academic is usually accepted in colleges and universities, while general is used for life, immigration, work, and citizenship. I would still recommend you to double check with the institution that you're applying to, whether it's a university or government of the country you're relocating to, because they might accept both of this or only one specific test. I used my IELTS General to immigrate to Canada. Let's start with the structure. I'll be covering the paper-based version because I have never had the experience with the digital exam, but these tips might still be helpful to you if you are taking IELTS on a computer. There are 4 parts to this exam: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. The first 3 are done consecutively, so you will be spending 3 hours on them without any breaks. Speaking part is done separately, and here the times may vary. You could have it scheduled the day before the main part, or the day after, or the same day, but before the main part of the exam or after. So it might be bad news for those who are traveling to another city for IELTS if you are going to spend 2 days there. Let's start with the main part that includes 3 big sections and lasts 3 hours. The first part is always listening, which takes approximately 40 minutes, 30 minutes of audio, and 10 minutes for you to complete your answers. This part is the same for both general and academic students. You are seated in this big conference room and usually are separated into rows of academic students versus general students. The exam coordinators will give you some draft papers, pencils, sometimes erasers and sharpeners. Then they will give you the paper with the task that you cannot open until they say so. And afterwards, they'll provide the instructions and start the listening part. Before you start listening, you will be given some time to read through this paper. Do not go to the next tasks, focus on one at a time. Reading and understanding the questions is important, so I would always recommend to read through everything before the audio starts. Also, underline the keywords. For example, the question is, what date do James and Kathy finally agree on? The key word here is finally, because they would probably discuss multiple dates. Like, should we meet on Thursday? Oh, I can't on Thursday. Maybe Wednesday would work. No, I can't on Wednesday. I'm going away. And finally, they decide on Friday. So even though you hear 3 different days, the answer would be Friday. Don't be afraid of writing on this piece of paper with the task, because the most important thing that you would have is the answer sheet. It does not have the questions, only numbers of those questions. This is the only thing that the committees will look at, so you don't want to mess it up. As for the audio itself, you will listen to 4 recordings of native English speakers and then write your answers to a series of questions. Recording 1, a conversation between 2 people set in an everyday social context. Recording 2, a monologue set in an everyday social context, for example, a speech about local activities. Recording 3, a conversation between up to 4 people set in an educational or training context, for example, a university tutor and a student discussing an assignment. And recording 4, a monologue on an academic subject, for example, a university lecture. The recordings increase in difficulty and they may include different accents: British, American, Scottish, Australian, so be prepared for that. The first part usually includes names and numbers. Names are spelled, but only sometimes. If it's a common word, like the name of the street, let's say Forest Drive, you should know how these words are written because they are fairly common: Forest and Drive. If it's a name like Brittany, it could be spelled in a variety of different ways. So they would include spelling letter by letter. With numbers, they would try to confuse you, so be prepared for that. Like I mentioned before, pay attention to the question. Let's say a person is registering for an event. the event coordinator asks for this person's phone number and says they got it on file 555-432-0190. But the person says, no, that's my old phone number. The correct one is 555-9876-0011. The question would probably be formed in a way for you to write down the correct phone number, but you have been so focused on writing down the first one that you have completely missed the point that it was not the correct phone number, that you should have written down the second one. And now you don't get the point. Another situation is when the first pronounced number is the right one. The person doesn't correct the coordinator and just says, that's right, that's my phone number. In this case, if you miss the phone number, you're equally screwed. So what should you do? The best thing is to improve your listening and writing skills. If you plan to pass IELTS on a computer, invest some time into increasing your typewriting speed. If you want to do it on paper, practice with pencils. The key thing here is listening for the meaning of the entire dialogue, as well as listening for specific details and writing everything down. So ideally, you should write down both of these phone numbers and then reprocess everything that you have heard and then decide which one should you put down in your answer sheet. So let's say your answer sheet looks like this. You know you need the name, the date, and the phone number. So write all the names, all the dates and phone numbers that you hear. Then you decide which one would work best for your answer. The same works for the following parts. You need to look both for specific words and the overall meaning of the recording. Next we have the reading part. This is where general and academic students receive different versions. You will flip your answer sheet to reveal the page for the reading answers. Then the coordinators will distribute the text sheet. Again, you can write in those, underline the important information, highlight the things you want to go back to, and draft answers to your questions. After that, you would need to transfer your questions to this answer sheet. This part takes 60 minutes. For general IELTS, the format includes extracts from books, magazines, newspapers, notices, advertisements, company handbooks, and guidelines. These are materials you are likely to encounter on a daily basis in an English-speaking environment. The reading test takes approximately 60 minutes, including the time it takes to transfer your answers from your question booklet to your answer sheet. You have 40 questions overall, and task types include filling gaps in a passage of written text or in a table, matching headings to written text to diagrams or charts, completing sentences, giving short answers to open questions, and answering multiple choice questions. Each correct answer receives 1 mark. Scores out of 40 are converted to the IELTS 9-band scale. For academic IELTS, you have 3 long texts which range from the descriptive and factual to the discursive and analytical. These are taken from books, journals, magazines, and newspapers. They have been selected for a non-specialist audience, but are appropriate for people entering university courses or seeking professional registration. Again, it takes approximately 60 minutes, including the time it takes to transfer your answers to your answer sheet. Again, you have 40 questions, and task types are the same as for general. As you can see, you have the variety of types of questions here. Some important things to pay attention to, again, look for keywords. If the question contains the word not, like what is not mentioned in the text, this not word would almost always be capitalized. But still, you need to pay attention to the smallest details. For example, which word form to look for. Let's say you have questions. In an emergency, a teacher will either phone the office or you have blank space here. If we look at this grammatically, it could either be a verb, so the teacher will either phone the office or evacuate the building, or it could be a noun. The teacher will either phone the office or, let's say, the police station. The next question. The signal for evacuation will normally be several something. Because you have the word several, it is always used before a noun. So you're looking for a noun here. And because it says several, this will be a noun in plural form, either with an S ending or with a regular plural form. If you have true, false, not given questions, you need to remember. For the answer to be true, you need to find solid proof in the text, even if it's expressed with synonyms. Let's say you have this statement, business basics is appropriate for beginners. If the text includes any of the following, the basic business course is good for novice students, or blah, 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 business course, blah, 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 end of sentence, and then this course is recommended for all levels, then you can choose true as your answer because you have proof with the words novice and all levels. If you have any of the following, business basics should only be taken by those who have a background in business, or this course is recommended for intermediate to advanced students, etc., then you need to select false because you have the proof to the opposite answer, even if it's not stated in the same words, like this course is not appropriate for beginners. You have words like background in business and intermediate advanced students. If you see the following information in the text, Business Basics is a course offered at Hamptons College. It is held every Tuesday at 6 p.m. in the main campus. The course requires prior registration and pre-approval interview. Don't forget your student card and the list of courses you have already taken before. You will receive credit upon completion of Business Basics. Here you would select not given because you don't have proof for true or false here. It's a common mistake when students choose false in a situation like this because they see information like list of courses you have already taken before, but it does not relate to their level in this particular course. We don't have any information about that. And assuming things, overthinking for the author of the text is dangerous territory. Don't do that. Don't take guesses and apply your own real-life experience here. You only have this text and nothing else in the world, so work with it. General tips for reading part. Practice skimming, which means reading through the text without thinking over each word, but for the overall meaning of it, because you don't have much time to cover everything. Try to increase your reading speed by reading more in English. If you are preparing for general, read instructions, manuals, promotions, advertising, and websites of different companies that offer their services. If you are practicing for academic, read scientific articles, news, opinion essays, and Wikipedia articles. Expand your vocabulary, especially with synonyms. When you see a new word, for example, circumstance, try to find synonyms for it: situation, condition, state of things, etc. Because a lot of questions in IELTS reading part are centered around finding synonyms for words. This is the last part of this big section that takes 3 hours. At this point, you have been in the auditorium for 2 hours and are most likely exhausted. But you need to pull yourself together and tough it out, because writing is probably the most difficult thing in the entire IELTS. It is graded more strictly than any other section. Why is that? Because here, all your language skills are in full view. Your spelling, grammar, sentence structure, tenses, understanding of the format. That is why it is easy for those who correct your papers to decrease the grade here. Realistically, it is extremely hard to get a score higher than 7.5 for writing, even for experienced IELTS teachers. 8 is marvelous. Anything higher than 8 means that you're either a genius or have hacked the system somehow. So while it is important to do your best and not get discouraged, I would strongly recommend you to try and get the highest possible scores in other sections to kind of balance out your overall result. This is unless you need the minimum result for each particular section. Some organizations look at those rather than the overall score. For example, the university will tell you we need minimum 6 for reading, minimum 7 for listening, minimum 7.5 for writing, and 7 for speaking. In this case, yeah, you have to work towards that. What do we have here? For both general and academic, you get 1 hour to complete your writing section. You have 20 minutes for the first short piece of writing and 40 minutes for the big essay thing. It is always better to start with the longest part because it is worth more and it's more difficult to write, so you have to put extra effort there. So leave the first task, this 20-minute thing, for the last 20 minutes of the hour that you have for the writing part. For general IELTS, you have the following. The topics are of general interest. In task 1, you will be presented with a situation and asked to write a letter requesting information or explaining the situation. You can write the letter in a personal, semi-formal, or formal style. In task 2, you will be asked to write an essay in response to a point of view, argument, or problem. You can use a fairly personal style. You will be asked to write at least 150 words for task 1 and at least 250 words for task 2. Task 2 is worth twice as much as task 1 in the IELTS writing test. Some examples that I got were write a letter to your manager to inform that you want to organize a birthday party for a coworker, or you have been in a hospital, write a letter to all of your colleagues, thanking them for something they did for you during your illness. So some general topics. Some tips here: pay attention to who you're addressing the letter to. If it's your manager or a person you don't know intimately, keep your writing professional, formal, and rather distant. You could be writing a letter to a longtime friend or a colleague, in which case it would be more personal and neutral, but don't use slang words or abbreviations because it is kind of frowned upon, so don't put LOL in there. But do use neutral conversational phrases and idioms. As for the word count, for both tasks, you should not exceed the number of words by, let's say, 30%. So if the minimum is 150, don't write 400 words because it's too much. For academic writing, write in a formal style. In task 1, you will be presented with a graph, table, chart, or diagram. You will be asked to describe, summarize, or explain the information in your own words. This might involve describing and explaining data, describing the stages of a process of how something works, or describing an object or event. In task 2, you will be asked to write an essay in response to a point of view, argument, or problem. You should find the issues interesting and easy to understand. Same time, same number of words. And again, task 2 is worth twice as much as task 1. So here in the first part, you have a graph, a bar chart, a pie chart, any picture with data or statistics or instructions of a process to describe it in impersonal academic language. 150 words is around one big paragraph or two small ones. You have specific vocabulary that you need to use here with a lot of synonyms for words like increase, decrease, and fluctuate. The good thing here is that you don't need to think about the format too much, just describe what you see in a coherent way, unlike with the letter where you have to style it like an email. Dear someone, then you have some space before the paragraph. I'm writing to you because blah, blah, blah. Then another paragraph, and then best wishes, yours faithfully, yours sincerely, whichever one fits in the situation. As for the essay, as I have mentioned, this is the most difficult part in the entire exam. The essay is more or less the same for both general and academic versions, but academic version would have slightly more difficult topics. For example, for general, I got a topic like what's more important for teenagers, friends, or family. And in academic, you will get more complicated issues like should we invest into space exploration or use these funds to resolve the issues on Earth, or something about the tax system or the healthcare system. Here you need to keep in mind a couple of things. Structure. The essay should look a certain way, divided into paragraphs of introduction, body, and conclusion. Specific writing style for different formats. It could be opinion essay, discuss interviews, personal, impersonal, etc. Grammar. Use correct tenses, spelling, and punctuation. Vocabulary. Use words appropriately. Relevancy. Stick to the topic questions without wandering off to other issues. Coherency, all your points need to be connected to each other. Linking words show fluency of your writing. And if you're taking paper-based IELTS, work on your handwriting so that it's tangible, and practice writing with a pencil because you will not have a pen there. And some general tips to prepare for the writing part. Write as much as you can. Check essays with ChatGPT. It may not be 100% helpful, but it's something. Find a tutor or coach to help you with writing. Search for examples of good IELTS essays online. Work on your synonyms and linking words. And revise grammar, tenses, conditionals, modal verbs, etc. The last thing we'll cover is speaking. So speaking is done separately and you're one-on-one with the exam coordinator, usually a native speaker, but that depends on the country. You might get the person who just speaks basic English. That happened to me one time. The person will invite you to a room at a set time, introduce themselves, and then explain briefly what would be happening. Then they'll turn on the recorder and everything you say will be on that device. This recording is then sent to the UK for evaluation. The person you're doing the speaking part with is not the one deciding on your score. They will be making notes during your speech, which could be taken into consideration during this evaluation process, but it's up to the main office to give you the score. The format is the same for both general and academic students, and as with essays, the topics might just vary in difficulty, but not too much. Part 1, the examiner will introduce him or herself and ask you to introduce yourself and confirm your identity. The examiner will ask you general questions on familiar topics, for example, home, family, work, studies, and interests. This section should help you relax and talk naturally. Here you need to give short answers, 1 to 3 sentences maximum, to the question that the coordinator asks you. 2, the examiner will give you a test card which asks you to talk about a particular topic, including points to include in your talk. You will be given 1 minute to prepare and make notes. You will then be asked to talk for 1 or 2 minutes on the topic. You will not be interrupted during this time, so it's important to keep talking. The examiner will then ask you 1 or 2 questions on the same topic. And part 3, the examiner will ask you further questions which are connected to the topic of part 2. These questions are designed to give you an opportunity to discuss more abstract issues and ideas. The examiner will want to see how well you can communicate opinions and information on everyday topics and common experiences. To do this, you will need to answer a range of questions. Speak at length on a given topic using appropriate language, organize your ideas coherently, express and justify your opinions, analyze, discuss, and speculate about issues. Make sure that you relax and talk fluently. You will need to speak naturally. Some tips on preparation here. Go through common topics on IELTS speaking and practice answering them yourself. Ask ChatGPT again to help you in correcting your mistakes and identifying points for improvement. Learn by heart a couple of phrases or idioms that could be used in a variety of different situations and introduce them in your speech to show higher level of vocabulary. Show a variety of tenses, conditionals, modal verbs. Speak slowly and clearly, don't rush. If you don't know what to say right away, use filler phrases instead of just being silent, like "that's an interesting question, I have never thought about it," or "wow, that's unexpected, I need a moment to think it through." If you didn't hear the person clearly, or if you are not sure that you can understand the question, ask them to repeat or clarify. There's nothing wrong with it, it just shows that you can steer conversation into a clearer territory in a natural way. Work on your pronunciation and don't worry about the accent too much, because pronunciation and accent are 2 different things. I think that covers all the basics, and if you are having this test on paper, you should receive the results after 2 weeks. If you'd like personalized help with IELTS preparation, check out my platform Preparer, where you can submit your writing and voice recordings on real IELTS topics for check and feedback. If you don't feel like looking for a teacher and taking lessons and just need to improve these 2 parts. And in general, if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Good luck with your tests.